Ruslan.
Piers Morgan says he does not identify as a man. There's a whole lot to this entire conversation, but yes, I am not trolling. He literally says that. But before we get into that, I kind of got to unpack the entire clip for you guys. Today, this conversation dropped. It's on Sky News Australia. Backlash starting with LGTV losing control of itself. All right, so I'm going to play you guys this. It's going to take me a while to point out all the specific things they're referencing, and then we'll get to the point where Piers Morgan drops that bombshell on us. But there's a whole lot here being discussed, and I don't want you guys to miss any of it, okay? So make sure you stay till the end of this video so we can unpack all of it. So let's just jump right into this clip, and I'll provide all the context you need. Check this out.
I think to bring Douglas back in, when you hear that teacher, there's clear evidence of what we've all been fearing has been going on, which is a teacher caught on tape literally spewing nonsensical gender ideology propaganda.
But one teacher?
Yes,
only one teacher.
One teacher,
tens of thousands.
Hang on, one teacher caught on tape. Right?
So he's talking about a teacher caught on tape. So at first I thought this was the case in Canada, where there was a teacher who was telling students that were Muslim that they had to participate in Rainbow Flag Month, and if they didn't, then they weren't welcome here. But apparently this is a second situation where it was a teacher in, I believe, the UK, student called despicable by teacher after challenging peer who identifies as a cat. Okay, so here I believe is the context of what they're being talked about. A 13-year-old girl who was called despicable by a teacher at a Church of England school in the United Kingdom on Friday after asking a classmate how she identifies as a cat. The schoolgirl and her friend were reprimanded by their teacher at Ray College in East Sussex at the end of an 8th grade life education class, where they were told that you could be who you want to be and how you identify is up to you. Following the lesson, one of the students asked a classmate, how can you identify as a cat when you're a girl? It's a great question. The teacher told the students they were being reported to school administrators and would no longer be welcome at the school if they continued to express the views that only boys and girls exist.
This is a sickness.
In the clip taken by one of the students, the teacher starts off by saying, how dare you? You've just really upset someone by questioning their identity. The student replies, if they want to identify as a cat or something, then they are genuinely unwell, crazy. The teacher asked the young girls where they got the idea that there were only two genders. Okay, so this is the story that is referenced at the beginning part of this clip. Okay, so now we have two documented cases of teachers spewing utter insanity. And granted, one of them is in Canada, one of them is UK. But you know this stuff's happening in America. We just don't have documentation of it. And so this is kind of setting the backdrop. And then we're going to look at another thing. So again, watch till the end of the video. And by the way, if you're enjoying this so far, this conversation around all the wild rainbow flag stuff and the stuff that's being pushed with the ideology, please smash that like button. It really does help a lot. If we can get this video to a couple thousand likes, it just tells YouTube that you enjoy it, and hopefully they will service it to more people. So let's jump back into this clip with Piers Morgan.
Right, there have been many other instances of this being reported, but no one's actually had it on tape. It's a bit like, I would liken it to the Partygate scandal, when we finally got a video of the people having what was clearly a party. There have been lots of rumours about it. So now we have a teacher clearly on tape doing this.
But it's not official school policy.
If I may,
schools across the country.
Well, she's still, to my knowledge, she is still working at that school. Douglas.
So she said not official policy, but she's still working there. She didn't get reprimanded for saying this stuff. So is the school complicit in it? I don't know. That's for you guys to decide. Check this out.
If I may, first of all, Ava rather unfortunately misspoke earlier when she said that the schoolgirl in question was acting out a fallacy. I think you meant a fantasy. But
by the way, this guy Douglas is so petty, and I love it.
Actually, she is acting out a fallacy.
Thanks ever so much.
A fallacy.
But do you know what I find fascinating? Do you know what's fascinating about Douglas?
A fallacy which has been propagated by gender ideologues and is doing profound damage to gay people, among others, in our society, as well as women.
Like
and let me explain explain very quickly why. I can't quite hear you. I can hear you muttering something.
Yo, the degree of petty this man has is amazing.
Let me quickly explain why. A poll that just got published in the United States showed that among the general population, support for gay marriage has been starting to decline in the last year.
Support for this sort of marriage is declining?
Why is that? It's because the arguments that actually brought about liberal rights for all minorities in the last few decades have started to get turned on their head and turned.
So what did he reference? Well, believe it or not, he's referencing this study that was just put out by Newsweek. I keep telling you guys there's a shift happening, and the shift is beyond just folks that are dismissed as patriarchal, fundamentalist Christians and Muslims. There is a shift happening in a cultural zeitgeist. Check this out. The number of Americans supporting these sorts of relationships has dropped from 71 to 64% compared to 1 year ago, with more people thinking it is not morally acceptable, according to a new Gallup poll, a change driven mostly by Republicans. Okay, the survey, Gallup's annual values and belief poll, was conducted between May 1st and May 24th and among a random sample of 1,000 adults living in all U.S. 50 states and the District of Columbia. If you guys don't know, whenever they're doing polls and stuff like this, and Gallup is participating, you got to get a sample group of at least 1,000. All right. It found that Americans were less supportive of a number of issues related to textuality and relationships, including, this is a shocker, birth control, with 77% of Americans finding it morally acceptable this year compared to 92% in 2022, and divorce support for which dropped from 81% to 78%. That's not nothing, as Jordan Peterson would say. And so there is a shift happening, and you guys can look into this poll for yourself. While from long-term perspective, Americans' opinions on issues around LGBT rights have followed a liberal trend, in 2002, a minority, 38% of Americans found this acceptable. The drop in support of these relationships this year has brought U.S. back to 2019, when 64% of Americans said they were socially acceptable. Okay, so there is a shift happening. The fall was driven by Republicans, according to Gallup, while 56% of Americans identifying as Republicans found it morally acceptable in 2002. Only 41% do this year. It is the lowest figure reported in Gallup's annual survey since 2014. It is the lowest figure reported since 2014. If I'm a part of this community, I am so frustrated that this is going backwards, that it went 9 years back in time. Okay. And it's because more people are having issues with this sort of ideology, and more people are by default finding themselves to be on the side of Republicans and conservatives when they historically weren't. I'd be one of those people, right? I feel like I've been pushed more and more and more into a conservative end of the spectrum, and I kind of historically haven't been. Okay, the decline in Republican support comes at a time when conservative forces inside the party have been pushing to limit, I had to say LGBT rights, because I think that's mainly hogwash, because it's limiting stuff like hormone replacement therapy and stuff like that. Okay, so let's get back to this clip. So I'm just giving you guys context, all right? So check this out.
And against people. What is the source of that? It is the gender ideology movement. What is the tripwire for the general public? It is children. It is people learning that their children are being taught nonsensical things. It is being seen by the wider public, most of whom are heterosexual and don't need to identify as cis or anything else. It is being seen from that vantage point as the LGBTQIA plus movement losing control of itself. And so a backlash is starting. And the backlash is coming because people are lying to children and are using children for medical experiments. There's nothing funny about that. There's nothing that should cause levity in that. It should be treated by adults seriously.
Okay.
All right, so I mean, this man Douglas Murray's going in. Okay, so check out this back and forth.
So, Douglas, it's really important, actually, all of that point that you've just brought up. It's very on brand for you, because, you know, you like to stoke fear. You've actually made a career out of it. I'll take you back to your book, The Strange Death of Europe, and you made a big fright. You frightened.
Okay, so here is, in my opinion, where the discussion completely goes off the rails. This lady, instead of addressing any point he made and the sources he cited, she goes straight to attacking him as someone that's fear-mongering. In any real debate, you lose. The moment you go to attack someone personally in his book and his this and his that, instead of addressing the thing, you've lost. It's called an ad hominem attack in debate.
To the entire public about your thoughts on Europe, and we ended up in Brexit. You weren't the sole contributor to that, but you were a big voice.
Can we stick on to the
Ava,
I will.
And then
now we're talking about LGBTQ,
if I may say so
and you're
very
creating.
Quickly,
Hang on, you spoke. I'm speaking.
No,
I'm speaking.
I'll
You spoke.
reply.
This is, I mean,
And I'll reply.
Hello. I haven't
Let
finished.
Ava speak, please.
Now,
Douglas.
back on the trans issue, when you're talking about LGBTQ, what you've just done there is basically say that the whole of America, who have historically had a problem with gay marriage, are now turning on it because a couple of children in a classroom in Sussex want to be a cat. If you can't see the ridiculousness in that argument, I can't help you.
The bigger
Well,
issue
first of
is
all, I
there
must
is no
respond
such
to
thing
Ava,
as gender
Piers.
ideology. We
I
all
must
have gender
respond to
identities. You identify as a man, and I fully respect you.
Well, no, hang on. I don't identify as a man. I was born a biological male.
Yes.
And there you have it. Piers Morgan. He said, I don't identify as a man. Run it back one more time.
Man, and I fully respect you.
Well, no, hang on. I don't identify as a man. I was born a biological
Yes,
male.
yes.
That's
Wow. Okay, I did not expect that from Piers Morgan. Okay, so he's starting to really push back on this, which is fascinating. Now, before we go any further, I got to show you something kind of crazy. Hey, you want to see something crazy? Over 50% of the people who watch this channel are not subscribed. And out of the people that are subscribed, less than 10% actually have their bell notification on. So do me a solid. Please make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure the bell notification is turned on so you don't miss anything we got going here. All right? Peace. Okay, so let's jump back into this conversation. I'm going to have one major takeaway that I think Christians have actually done a good job in reflecting and leading in these sorts of conversations. Okay, but before we do that, let me play the rest of this clip because it gets feisty. So Piers just say he doesn't identify as a man.
where this whole thing
Piers, you need to let me
goes
come in.
rogue. I'll bring you back in, Douglas, in one second. That's where the whole debate goes rogue. You were born a biological male. You were born a biological female. Douglas, biological male. This is just a fact, right?
No.
Once you start saying there are hundreds of genders and you can identify as anything you want, you're going to end up with kids at school going, I'm a horse. And you've got to trick
Darkness.
be like a horse.
Piers, you're confusing two things.
No, I'm not.
Sex and gender.
I'm not.
I
They
accept
are being conflated.
biological sex is one thing which I totally accept, and so do 99% of the people in the LGBT plus community. Gender is something different. Gender identity is how you see yourself.
It's like this one specific talking point is just so tired, and they keep using it.
And do you believe it's limitless?
No, I don't believe it's limited.
What's the limit?
Well, there was basically male and female and intersex, but there are people who have different gender identities.
No, but how many genders are there?
Well, there is no fixed number.
So what's the limit?
I don't see a particular limit.
There's no limit. So when you said there's no, you said there is a limit. Now you admit there's no limit.
Sorry.
Got him. Oh man, this is amazing. Okay, I love that this conversation's happening. I love that this conversation's happening on YouTube, on social media. I love that there is a shift happening in the zeitgeist because the conversation's happening. I think the conversation needs to keep happening. I think guys like Piers Morgan, who I may disagree with on a plethora of things, leaning in and saying things like, wait a minute, hold on, I don't identify as a man, I am a man, is a great thing for the cultural narrative that is happening in terms of these conversations. Because for far too long, folks just kind of checked out and kind of let the crazies run the asylum, right? And so now that this conversation is happening, I think this is a huge net positive. And I'm going to give you guys an example of, I think, how Christians have actually done a good job with regards to the crux of this issue. But let me finish this out.
Well, there is male and female.
Is there a limit or not to the number of genders?
Identity.
No, that's sex.
But
on gender, is there a limit to the number of genders?
Well, there are some people who are asexual. That's an identity.
No, there are.
Some
The BBC
people-
has put in education videos. There are 100 plus genders.
Well, I don't agree.
So that made no sense. Oh, no.
Agree with that. I don't agree with that.
So what is the limit? What's the number?
Well, I'm not going to specify a particular number, but it's very small.
But where do
very
you draw?
small.
Where do you draw the line?
Well, I draw the line based on science and evidence, and we know that there is a thing called intersex, where people are born with a mixture of both.
That is
male,
literally what it says on.
both
That's what it
male
says on the
and
tin.
female.
That is intersex.
Yeah.
People are born with chromosomes from both,
Yeah.
right? That is a medical condition.
Yeah.
That is a medical condition. The fact that people conflate transformers with folks who are born with both chromosomes is such a disingenuous conversation. Two totally different things. A very small population, percentage of the population are born with being intersex, and it's not the same as what we're seeing with the ideology and the transformer stuff being driven on kids.
Inarguable, right? We're talking about gender.
Well,
Douglas,
trans identity is also a biological fact.
I know, but once
rooted in brain structures and processes,
understand it, but once
as the new science shows.
But once you get into 100 genders, people can
we're not
literally...
debating 100 genders.
Well, actually, the BBC has taught kids. This is back to Douglas's point about affecting the brains of impressionable young kids.
Well, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with the BBC if they're saying 100 plus genders.
Okay, Douglas.
Let's let Douglas get his last word in.
Very quickly, I don't know, Ava, anything about your career. I don't know if you have one. But you did try.
The degree of petty between Douglas and Ava just going back and forth is amazing.
I tried to imply that you knew something about mine, and you just showed you know nothing about it, because actually my 2017 bestseller, The Strange Death of Europe, was not about the EU. So you should learn at some point to read more than the title of the book before commenting upon it.
It was about migration.
Let me very quickly.
And how rude are you? How rude
How rude of you?
You built a career out of fear-mongering, and you're now importing these evangelical American ideas onto UK television.
You haven't even built a career, have you? You haven't even built.
Oh my gosh. The degree of petty is amazing, but I'm here for it.
Talking about, I'm on the same panel as you, honey, and we're getting the same.
Do you know what? I'm going to wrap it up by saying you're.
Shout out to Piers Morgan for wrapping it. So this is something I want to show you guys real quick that I think kind of encapsulates the crux of this issue. So there was a community in the 90s that oftentimes when people thought of Christians, some people, not all people, in their head, they would think of this group called Westboro Baptists. Okay, Westboro fundamentalist Baptists who would just do things that were deplorable and not okay, and they would do it in the name of Jesus. And I think something that Christians did a fantastic job about is that we made it a point collectively throughout the 90s and the 2000s to say, no, these people do not represent Christianity. Okay, and made it a point to say that is a cult, they're fringe, they do not represent the gospel or Christianity. And in effect, we helped stir the conversation away and pointed out that Westboro Baptist is a cult. They're not a part of Christianity. And so what I think would need to happen, this is just my opinion, the average person that's walking around here that is same-sex attracted, and maybe they're a part of the L or the B or the G, I think they need to make a concerted effort to distinguish themselves from the fringe and the radicals that are driving this ideology that we're seeing pushed on kids. Because I don't think the most of them are for the stuff that we're seeing happening with identifying as a cat and telling Muslims they're not welcome and all the culture wars. I actually don't think they identify this. But the issue is they've allowed that representation to run rampant. And here, I think they could take a page out of Christian's book and say, you know what? We cannot let the folks, the radicals and the fringes and the cult leaders to reflect the sum of this community, or this is just going to keep completely diverging away from any type of reasonable conversation. So that, I think, is what needs to happen. And will it happen? I don't know. It happened with Christians, and we were very clear to move away from these sorts of conversations in terms of how we're being represented in media, and made it a point to say, we are not Westboro Baptist. Westboro Baptist is good. I think the same thing needs to happen within the LGTV community and say, hey, the folks pushing this ideology on kids, yeah, we're not that. They're on something else. We got to move away from that. I think that needs to happen, or we're going to continue seeing trends like we pointed out from Newsweek regarding this entire conversation and them losing traction in the polls. So those are my thoughts on this. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you smash that like button. Make sure you subscribe, bell notifications on, all that good stuff. And if you want to partner with us, help us continue making videos like this and getting our daily after party streams, our podcasts before they drop, access to our private Discord server, and all that kind of stuff by helping us stay independent, only answering to you so we never have to make goofy commercials like these.
Our friends at Genucel Skincare have exciting news to celebrate in 2023.
The Manscaped during my showers after workout has given me much more confidence.
And that's where Mudwater comes in.
True Classic has got your back.
All thanks to the sponsor of today's video, SayMine.com.
Established Titles is your opportunity to earn the title of Laird or Lady. Subject to credit approval, rates range from 7.99% APR to 19.99% APR, included 0.50% auto pay discount.
If you don't want us to make ads with brands you don't care about, sign up for our online community for as little as $5 a month to keep us independent and ultimately answering to you as our boss. You get all sorts of benefits like daily replays of our after party streams, exclusive access to our Discord community, and early access to our podcast interviews, all starting for only $5 a month.